On March 12th, we held a town hall meeting to show the final rendition for renovation of the West Course. In case you weren't there, here's a video showing what we talked about.
Hello everybody. The bewitching hour of 5:30 has approached and we want to get this underway. I'm Hal Bodley, Chairman of the Golf Course Renovation Committee, and we certainly want to welcome everybody here and thank you so much for coming. Spending your time to see what we've tried to do in the hundreds of hours we've spent to try to make the West Golf Course one of the best in Florida, if not the best in Florida. So we're working awfully hard at that and hope that you enjoy it. Our program tonight will fall this way. After I introduce everybody, Jason Straka is going to talk about the West Course design that has been unanimously approved by the Golf Course Renovation Committee and the Board of Directors. Of course, the next step will be for a full vote of our membership, and that is tentatively set for April the 16th. We're hoping that everybody will be happy about what we're trying to do and the changes that we're hoping to make. From the last town hall meeting, there were some complaints about some of the drawings. The membership did not like the idea of turning number 17 into a par 3. So that was changed to make it a par 4. One of the condo units, the members there, the residents there, were upset that the number 2 green on the West Course was being moved away. So we went out and surveyed that, and we have moved that closer to the condo as part of the plan. So we're trying to make everybody happy, which is impossible. But at least that's our plan. So I do want to, before I turn it over to Jason, I just want to thank the Golf Course Renovation Committee. We have been spending hour after hour after hour looking at drawings, interviewing architects, talking about irrigation, talking about engineering, talking about all of the elements that go into renovating a golf course. And believe me, for a sports writer, to learn this sort of thing, it's really been an education. It's like a master's degree in something, I'm not sure just what, but I think I'm passing it and I've learned an awful lot from this committee. So I'd like to thank everybody, a very diverse committee that we had doing all of this work for us. Thank you. And they did not get paid. But anyway, Jason is going to go over the plans that he has presented. They are tweaked and changed a little bit since we were last here. Talk a little bit about how he arrived at some of the drawings and that type of thing. And then after Jason shows everyone what we've come up with, what has been approved by the Renovation Committee, and hopefully you'll address it and approve it. After that, we're going to have Ed Shaughnessy tell us how we're paying for it again. He's talked about this before very well, the fact that there'll be no assessment, and how the country club is going to pay for this project. So it's not going to come out of your pockets no matter what you might have heard or been told. So without any further delay, I'm going to turn this over to Jason, and he has a great presentation on where we stand on the West Golf Course. And again, thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Fantastic. Thanks for coming out. Nice to see such a big crowd tonight. Thank you to Hal. He's been a great president, great chairman. Thank you to the committee. Again, I don't think that they get enough credit at any club that we work at. But here, they're just they've done such a fantastic job, not only keeping Dana and myself on our toes, which is sometimes a difficult job to do, but they have succeeded in that. They've been great to work with. So I would like to personally thank them on behalf of Dana and myself. So thank you. Tonight we'll just give you an update. There's a few things before we get into a couple of the design modifications, since all of you were with me last time. I've got all the hole by holes queued up. I think that you can see them in the overall master plan and packets that you have there. But afterward, certainly if you want to ask questions in the public setting, or if you want to pull me aside, I'd be happy to pull up any of the individual holes and talk with you about them. If we go through all 18 holes tonight, I probably would lose half of you asleep. So I'm going to hit the highlights, and I'll try and keep it, my part of it, as short as I can. Okay? Okay. So what I did is I put up in the design process, if you remember way back when we talked about all the different stages and steps, and it's not a quick design process, but it's a very thorough one. So the items in red are things that have been completed. So I have research and analysis and schematic design and Design development was adding a lot of the detail. You guys heard me talk about sort of we have built the skeleton, and then we put on the skin and the eyes and the bones and all the rest of it to put the whole person together here. And then we're at final master plan phase, which is the piece that you have in your hands right now. Concurrently, we've been working on construction documents. So that is the packet, if you will, that the golf course contractors will be using to go and to bid the project, so that we know that when it comes time to vote on the project, that we can build it for what we say we're gonna vote on. And so those construction documents are underway. It's about a 6-week process. We've got a few more weeks to go. There's also a component that comes from your irrigation designer consultant and also from the civil engineer. All of that goes together, and then we have hand-selected 7 different high-quality golf course contractors whom the club would be comfortable working with, who Dana and I have all worked with in the past. So they are a range from regional companies to ones that are national companies. They certainly have the wherewithal to get it done in the time frame that we're going to demand of them. So that's happening right now. We have a pre-bid conference that's scheduled for March the 25th. So if you see myself walking around with a whole group of folks out here and you're wondering what's going on, those 7 contractors and some of their representatives will be in for about a 4 or 5 hour work session. We'll sit down, we'll go through all the documents, the specifications, we'll walk the golf course, so able to look at all the technicalities of accessing the site and how they would manage all of their construction. And then their bids will be due several weeks after that. Once those bids come in, roughly around, and I can't, let's see, we said mid-April here, which I believe is, I think the bids are due something like on the 12th. Then we put together a very thorough bid analysis. So we have a bunch of spreadsheets and we have an itemized bid that we go through to make sure that everybody understood what they were bidding on, to look for any competitive advantages which would be beneficial to the club. We'll bid it with different bid alternates, so it's not just, here, bid this sheet here, but it's also, what if we ask you to do this or not to do that, and then they put a bunch of bid alternates together. So pretty much any sort of realm or avenue that you can look at building this project, we will be doing so throughout this bidding process. So it's very thorough, it's very detailed, and so everybody should feel comfortable with where we'll be at. Once that happens, again, then we'll be ready for the membership vote on the overall plan and those budget numbers. And then hopefully all of you will approve that plan. And then in terms of what would happen next is that we would go into the permitting process. That permitting process will take several months. It will go through spring and through summer and conclude in early fall. The ideal then would be the contractors would be able to mobilize about February the 1st. That doesn't mean that the golf course shuts down in any stretch of the imagination. Time is my time. They keep it short enough. So, so the contractors will be able to mobilize and to have materials delivered on site while all of you are playing golf. It would be seamless and you really wouldn't know that they were in and around, but they would just be getting prepared. We know that the men's member guest invitational would be mid-March, and then we would have one more day for the general membership to play, and then the golf course, at least 9 holes of it would close then. I believe it would be March the 16th. And then the course would reopen in November of 2020. Okay, so that's the overall schedule. So the next slide that you'll see come up is that if people weren't aware, about a month or so ago, the club hosted the annual meeting for the Donald Ross Society, and there were quite a few members that actually showed up to that banquet. It was nice to see all of you come. And we had people that were members of Donald Ross clubs all over the country that came to see the golf courses here. They invited me to come in and to talk, and I know Hal was there, and Andy was there, and Jim Slattery, to talk about what some of the plans were. And I can tell you that they were so very excited that Hal and I received personal letters on behalf of the president of the Donald Ross Society and Tufts Archives, which hosts all of the original Donald Ross drawings, that they actually wrote a letter of support, saying if there's anything that we can do to basically help convince your membership to undertake the project, please let us know. They said that you really have a gem there, and they would love to see much of the Donald Ross pieces restored. So, and this will be available, by the way, I'm assuming, Al, this will be available on the website, but I won't read the letter, but the letter was part of the presentation here. And so this was from the president of the Donald Ross Society, basically supporting the project.
Sounds wonderful.
It was a nice, it was a very nice thing that they did. Yes, they're definitely excited about it.
In the meantime, I thought maybe this might be a good time to ask Jason or anyone on this committee some questions while we're waiting to get the technology that we don't seem to be up to par on.
One quick question for Mr. Stryka. Is what we have now not a Donald Ross design?
The footprint is as close to a Donald Ross design as I've seen. So, but that's the footprint. But so topographically, no, very little of what he designed has been left. So if people that weren't here the last go around, if you will, what we actually did is that we went to, again, Tufts Archives. And Andy and I worked together with their committee that was there, their staff that was there, to get all of the hole-by-hole documents. So he had 1912 drawings for the west and the east, excuse me, the west in particular. And then in 1924, he came back, which is, again, this is very rare. I mean, you have to understand that most golf clubs that claim to be a Donald Ross, he never set foot on. Okay, so what you have is truly remarkable and special from the historical significance, not only being the oldest club in Florida, but again, a lot of times what he would do is that he would just sketch out 18 holes and then he would send it to the club and then they'd pay him a bit of money, or he might go give it to a contractor and never ever step foot on that golf course. So not only did he come to for the original build, but in 1924 he actually came back. He went through the entire golf course, both golf courses actually, in hole-by-hole format, created sketches, modifications that he wanted to see, and quite a few notes. So we took both sets of those drawings and those notes, we converted them into then CAD drawings, so modern-day architectural drawings. And much of what you'd see on the master plan that you're holding in your hand was actually digitized right off of the Donald Ross drawings. So in terms of whether it's mound locations, bunker locations, those greens that you see, other than obviously the 7th hole, which would be a new hole, every other single green there has been, we call it digitized, meaning essentially it's been copied. So the same size, the same shape, exactly what Donald Ross had, including all of his notes mimicking a lot of the contouring.
Thank you.
So there's the letter, which again, anybody will be able to read on the website. Yes, sir.
Just want to make a comment that one of the comments on the west course is the elevation of the greens. Looking at the diagram, that really doesn't tell me, are some or several of the greens going to be kind of flattened out a bit on the new design?
So there are only about 2 different elevated greens on the west course. So when I say elevated, they were only about 4 feet high. So not, for example, number 4 was one of those holes which was originally elevated. But we actually have old scorecards and pictures of hole number 4, and hole number 4 was only about chest high. So that, the height of that green, even though you might hear that that's an original Ross design, that's not the case. So that would be, your assumption would be correct, is that we would keep the elevated greens that he had elevated the same. The other greens, they would be restored back to more or less what they were originally. Now, there were some notes that he came and he talked about raising some greens maybe 2 feet, but that was from original grade, not from what they are now. So he actually had quite a few notes where there would be maybe one side would be elevated and would fall off into, for example, a chipping area. The other side of the green might actually have a slope kicking the ball onto the green. So by no stretch of the imagination was it, I'd sort of call it monochromatic, if you will, where it's just, one size fits all and every green is a turtleback, sort of a volcano with the top chopped off. It wasn't like that at all.
Anyway, I just want to make one other comment. I'm happy that we're redoing the west course, and I think with Pelican being developed down the street, so the new boy on the block, although it's a different type of club, I think in a year and a half opening a new course here will create some excitement and will allow us to say we got something special too here now. And I think, maybe with Pelican not being there may be a different question. But now that Pelican is there, we don't want to be the, Pelicans down the street in Bel Air who? So I think it's a great idea.
And I appreciate that. I agree with you, obviously. You know, that's one of the interesting things is that when we're reaching out to contractors right now, I will tell you that the golf industry has gotten much, much stronger as of late. And so a lot of the golf course contractors are taking work through 2020 already, and they're handpicking their projects. So that's a good sign for our economy, a good sign for them. However, I know that they've been turning down a lot of opportunities to bid different projects. But this is one they had earmarked, and then when they got the phone call inviting them to bid, they were super excited. And, you know, unanimously, every one of them said, you know, this is a project that, you know, otherwise we probably would turn down. But they said just because of the stature of the club, the interest of the project, it's really starting to get a buzz within the golf community, not only with Florida, but nationally. You know, I know that, you know, some of you, you know, maybe that is a big deal, and maybe some it's not. But I can tell you that it's already starting to quite a bit of buzz around the U.S. So, and they're very excited to bid it, you know, because of that.
I don't know if it's a question or, you know, just a comment. Thank you. But the, you know, a lot of times this club, it was started in 1900, and Jim Slattery and, you know, Hal, I know this wonderful history. And if you go back, this wasn't just any old golf club. It was one of the great clubs in America. And all what Jason and Dana are doing are really trying to restore this club back to what it was. And this can be, again, one of the, you know, top 100 golf clubs in the country if we do it right. And if all the members support it, and they have a beautiful plan here. And, you know, I talked to Jim and he goes, well, did you know the pro here was from Carnoustie, Scotland, Alex Smith. And by the way, he was here for 20 years. And there was an article in the paper, and oh my gosh, Saracen and Snead were playing in the tournament. And Walter Hagen barely beat him, and not quite sure the order, but there were just stories like this. And Sam Parks, who won the 35 US Open, was a member here. And you just go on, and here was this 5-star resort hotel that kind of fell on bad times, and it got twisted around. So it's just kind of an old, dusty place that's still magnificent, but it could be just even more fabulous. And people don't realize what a great place this can be. And I just wanted to make that comment. And if Jason could maybe expound on that a little bit, it'd be nice.
Sure. Well, first I thought you were going to say back in 1912 when Jim and Ed started working here. And I was here. You were. So there is. Yes, I'll answer your question. So I mean, there is that opportunity. I mean, it's for those of you who were in the meeting when Dana was here with us last. You know, there's no question. There's a lot that's riding on this particular project. There are some infrastructure issues you have to deal with, and so, you know, but beyond that, there is just a wonderful opportunity that very few clubs, if any clubs, have in front of them right now in the country. Yes, sir.
A question probably to the committee. Has any member of the committee played on a course that you have designed or redesigned?
Yes, I.
And-
Canada, the Georgia
and-
Bay Club.
And did
You mean of our work or just in general?
no, your work.
Oh, okay.
On courses that you have redesigned or designed entirely.
Yes.
And your reaction to them?
I played on a course called the Georgian Bay Club, which is north of Toronto, looking out over Georgian Bay. Spectacular. It is a prime course in southern Ontario.
Did you play it before the redesign?
It was initially.
It was a new design.
New course.
Okay, thank you.
I've also played the Devil's Pulpit and the Devil's Paintbrush, which are very unusual courses, started by the guys that invented Trivial Pursuit. And they're, as you can imagine, they're unusual courses, but very good courses.
You say the proof of the pudding is in the pie.
Dana Fry designed one of the courses at our club in St. Louis. It was exceedingly tough topography to work with. Exceedingly difficult topography to work with. It's, I think, the number 7 golf course in the entire state of Missouri. It's called Tavern Creek Golf Club at St. Albans.
May I? Hello.
Oh, yes.
I respectfully request that you go over the course design. I appreciate the platitudes and the history, but I came here to see what the golf course is going to look like, and I need to be out of here in about an hour.
I just want to say,
He's a plant, by the way. I said it started dragging on. You need to.
I just want to say, first, being from Toronto, I know the courses very well, you mentioned. And Devil's Pulpit, that was a fantastic course. Devil's Paintbrush was a bit tricked up. Chris also put his hand up. Maybe he can say what courses he's played.
Okay, we'll do it right afterward. So how about Debbie, we go to number 2. So I'm not, again, I won't go every single hole, otherwise we generally will be over here an hour, so we don't want to do that. So hole number 2, here this is the individual, by the way, and so again, you'll have an opportunity to go on the website and, and on your website, and please go through all of these. What we did, just so you know, is that we created a numbering system, so improvements for each particular hole then are keyed here, and then this is the greens complex, and I'll do both sides over here. So this is so again, these are numbered, these are the corresponding numbers, this is the greens complex blown up, and then this is a lettering system corresponding to what's happening on the green itself. So hole number 2, I just wanted to point out that, yes, that for those folks who live in the condo association, we heard you loud and clear. We went through, we had to do some finagling, and so we switched some cart paths around. We worked on the short game area a little bit, and then we did shift this green, which it's a little tough to see on that individual hole, but when you look at the overall, you'll notice that we moved it about 60 or so feet to the west, so that it would have a better view. The topography is a little bit better, so and it's also not as the whole committee, because we were actually out looking at it together. There were some trees that were sort of blocking or obstructing the view of it, and so it's not behind those trees anymore. It's to the west and south of those trees. So that was one change since the last go around. Debbie, if we can go to, you remember what holes we said we wanted to touch on. So if I missed something here, so we want to do number 10 and number 17. Okay, so we can go to 10. So if we remember talking about hole number 10, one of the things that the town was interested in was having the golf course take some stormwater management, some stormwater development. And so this is ongoing discussions with the town. And so we reworked the pond that's behind the green. We created a creek system that goes out to Bayview. And so Bayview now will have a creek that flows from there, as this is, by the way, a restoration of the original Ross. This is pretty much exactly what the creek system looked like. However, the pond we made a bit smaller, but some of it becomes dry area. Won't mean much to you by looking at it, other than the topography will be really rolling and will be restored and really nice looking. But it's also an engineering way, as Hal was saying, that we're getting through a lot of the details right now, where we're able to create some stormwater management for the town, if so, that if in fact the club decided to go that route and engage the town with that opportunity. So, but number 10 now, by the way, the other thing that was nice about it too is that we were able to lengthen out number 10. Again, you're talking about just from the back tees, but for those who do play those tees, I think that you'll like that change too. Yes, ma'am.
If I may, since you brought up the issue of storm water.
Yes.
I'm from South Garden 4, and we have an ongoing discussion going on with the country club and with JMC with regard to Bellevue Boulevard and the water rushing around and going down to the properties to the north.
Right.
And what I just wanted to voice is our interest that the infrastructure be looked at to accommodate the rainwater, and I see you're including some of that at the back end of the course, but it really needs to be addressed at the front end where the two course and whatever.
I'm glad you brought that up. So from the golf side of things, we're doing what we can as a golf course. When I say that, what's under my control, meaning is in the turf area. So within those turf areas, we're capturing as much of the surface runoff as we can and directing it towards the creek. So that should help alleviate some of the problem. Now, I was over there actually with some of the people, and I don't know who that gentleman was, Ed, but we went out and we looked at it. Some of the issue is because it's coming in off of the road, and of course there was supposed to be another stormwater catch area there. And they ended up taking it across the road, down the curb, and straight into the parking garage that you have there. So there's not much from my end of things that I can do about that. What I can do is that things that are running off of the turf areas, I can help catch that water and redirect it away. You're welcome. If we could go to, I think, number 17 in particular. I know that was probably the biggest hot button topic. So hole number 17, if you remember, there was, we heard we don't really want 5 par 3s, and we really would like to have 17 remain a par 4. So what I did directly after that meeting is that I went out and I spent quite a bit of time looking at how we can convert number 17 or leave it as a par 4 while still having the design for holes what are you looking at there is 9 and 10 and 12. And so we were able to accomplish that. So I think what's really fascinating about that hole is that it becomes a, quote, drivable or short par 4, if you will, which was very similar to what the Ross original was. What was so fascinating to me about the way that he had that drawing and the thing that you're looking at now is that there was a creek system that actually flowed. Now, there's a couple of big oak trees, which all of you are probably too familiar with right now. And so those are the 2 oak trees that if you look to the left side of the landing area that are going to remain. So we weren't going to touch those. Those will they're still maintain a key or integral part to the strategy of the hole. The creek system, which if you look closely, it used to follow exactly along the left edge of the fairway. What we did is that we started it up past the green. It runs past the green into the sort of the landing area if you're really aggressive, if you're filling your oats that day. Then we took it and we moved it to the other side of the 2 oak trees and away. So that if you're laying up there, you've got a little bit more breathing room. You feel a little bit more comfortable. If you're feeling like you're going to go for it and risk a little bit and really have a strong tee shot, knock it up close someplace to the green, the further that you drive it up there, the narrower it gets, the more the water comes into play. The other thing that was really fascinating about the way that Donald Ross had it was that when he came back in 1924 in the greens complex, if you look down in the lower right here, this was one of the greens that he talked about raising 2 feet. Now that wasn't not a volcano height. But what was happening is that he was setting it roughly about 6 feet above the creek. And then he had short grass that came in off the left side of the green. It was really fascinating because if you really got down into the details, which we did, you'll notice that there's a couple of little plateaus. When I say plateaus, he talked about like 1 foot rises in the green. But if there's green speeds that Andy keeps it, those become pretty noticeable. And so very fascinating that you would be able to put pins right in between those locations and that bank right along the creek. So if you're getting up there, again, this is a short par 4, pretty short, really short par 4. But if you're trying to get aggressive and you're trying to make a birdie, or maybe you're thinking about if you've got the wherewithal to knock it up there, maybe even try and make an eagle, you had some really, really dangerous, tricky pin spots. Then you would have some that were in the back right and the front right. So you could go from easier to sort of mid and then to very, very difficult where you hit 2 great shots, it's an easy tap-in birdie. But it's one of those holes, they're really fascinating, I love them. When you walk off of there and you've made a 6 and you walk off and you go, how in the world did I just do this on this little hole? Which I can tell you, I do that all the time. So, but again, it worked out really well. So for those people who wanted par 4 put back there, I think it's going to be a really dynamic, dramatic par 4. It's going to be a ton of fun. I mean, quite honestly, it's just going to be a ton of fun. You're coming down the stretch and you're playing a match, you've got a chance where you could really make up a couple of strokes or you could really bury yourself. But again, it's not a hole that's going to beat you up. So it's not, a 400 and some odd yard par 4 where it's just a long slog. It is just going to be a lot of fun. So those 5 and 6, we can show up 5 and 6, sure. Okay, so here's hole number 5. Again, this is, by the way, we've been doing a lot of the technical grading drawings, the construction drawings, if you will. So we're getting into a lot of the 3D design work. Again, you're just looking at it in 2D. But it's really worked out very well, I can tell you, in the technical drawing aspect of it thus far. So we did, again, we always talk about research and analysis piece to it, but one of the very early on things that we did was that we actually modeled the depth of all of these ponds. So we knew exactly how deep they were and what the contours were underneath them. So when that pond actually disappears, we know exactly how much material we'd have to move off of the dam end of it, really off the west end of it, so that we can do exactly what we were saying we were going to do. So when you're playing hole number 4 and hole number 5, and you're standing on hole number 3, that you have these sweeping views of the bay. And in fact, it has worked out very, very well in that regard. So if you were, again, looking at those technical drawings, the pond really would be right about in this area here. So it's, we were able to widen out the fairway a little bit. We did some bunker restoration. Again, this was all Ross drawing work. There's really nothing that's very different than that, other than we converted it, if you remember, to a short par 5. That's right where the creek falls in front of the green here. So it's an exciting sort of go for it, not go for it. Other maintenance benefits to it is that there's a lot of catch basins right down the middle of the fairway. You know, if you think about it, you probably end up in those divots quite often. My guess is that you're like many other places where you just roll the ball out of the divot. You're not supposed to do that. But we're going to really alleviate that, and it's also a drainage benefit too. By the way, that's one other aspect. Again, these are these technical things that make the maintenance piece to it, you know, a lot better in the long run. Is that when we're talking about restoring these creek systems, you know, what happens with the ponds that were built there now is that they artificially hold the water table up high. And so we know that water, because we've sampled it, you know, it's not very good water, groundwater quality. And so, you know, Andy will struggle with certain areas just because of the high salt loads. Not a whole lot he can do about it, right? So by doing some of this restoration work and putting these creek systems in like this, it'll help drop that water table down, and it really gives Andy a bit of a head start. So again, there's a lot of things happening here, right? So I mean, there's a playability in the prestige and the aesthetics and all of that, but there's a lot of this truly is geared towards long-term improved maintenance. And 6, if we want to show 6, this again, this did grade out very well too. We had the tees right down on the seawall, if you will. The tee shot will actually rise slightly up to the landing area. I've been telling people it's sort of like a mini Pebble Beach number 8, if you will. You're hitting down low up to a high plateau, if you will. There will be a bank, so those of you who are scared to death about hitting it into the bay, you've got a bit of a sideboard, so it'll be fun. You can play it right, and if you catch the side sweep of the fairway, it'll be perfect, and it'll work great just the way you envisioned it. If you chicken out a little too much, you'll be stuck on a hill. That can be Dana's fault, not mine. So it's when your ball ends up in the fairway, then that was my design. So that worked out well, and if we want to end with number 7, we got number 7 in here too. Again, things really worked out well with number 7 too. So thus far, we were very, very pleased with where we're at in the process overall. And with that, I think that we'll turn it over to Ed. You want to do questions first? Okay, we'll do some questions first. So any questions about him? And if there's any other holes you want me to bring up, we can do that too. Yes, ma'am.
Question number 7, what's the status of trying to get the land, or this is going to happen without, we said it was going to happen even if we didn't get the land, but it would be better if we had the land. What's the status?
Well, from a design perspective, there is an alternate, right? So the 7th hole gets shortened a little bit, and rather than sitting here, the green would sit about here. So there is an alternate with that, but in terms of update, why don't you?
We've delivered a contract to the town of Bel Air offering them twice the appraised value of that parcel. The appraised value is about $50,000. Our offer was just over $100,000. I think it was $101,665. So we're not taking advantage of the town, but I think it was a very generous offer. And if we can get it for that price, I think it would be a good deal for Bel Air Country Club. Yeah, and we'll do the seawall as well, absolutely. They directed at me or at the architects?
For those of us that enjoy walking as much as we do, are there going to be avenues across the waterways and streams and things so that we don't have so big of a hike?
Yes, so there's actually plenty of bridges which are planned. It's a great question. There are plenty of bridges which are planned for walkers and carts, I mean, quite honestly. So for those of you who like to ride or need to ride, That doesn't mean that, at the end, that we will put in some additional simple walking bridges, but that was one of the things that I was really pleased with how it turned out as well, is that it's an extremely walkable golf course, the way that it's laid out, including with all of the avenues across the waterways, yes, for sure.
And for Mr. Shaughnessy,
Ms. Marcellus, yes.
I really, really want to have that green out in the water. I do not believe that doubling the appraised value is even a reasonable expectation to have that offer accepted. And town folks don't bargain against themselves. Because they are part of the public trust and they have the lands that belong to all of the citizens, they need a spectacular offer to not keep it for future generations. So while you and I would put our business mind on saying, hey, we've given them double what the tax assessor says, I don't believe that you're even in the ballpark. I truly believe that they're waiting for a realistic offer from Bel Air. And it's got to be at least triple plus of what you've offered.
That's a question I will defer to.
Okay. That's very debatable, your question. However, we are going to meet with some of the commissioners and the town manager in the next few days. Many of the residents are not even aware that they don't own all of that peninsula. They own half of it. We own the other half. We're giving them an offer to buy half of their half. We're gonna give them $100,000 as our offer. You're saying we should offer more. We're also gonna do the seawall, which is gonna save them a lot of money. We're also going to maintain the sliver of land that we don't buy so the citizens of Bel Air can walk down to that area. We're gonna maintain that. And one thing I want to point out to you, and I've pointed out and will point out to the councilman, is you look at the new condos that are over here. They have developed, or they are creating $600,000 of taxes to the city of Bel Air. And do you think this country club had anything to do with people buying those condos? And if we become one of the top courses in the state of Florida or in the country here, I think that's going to improve the value of the properties in this city, of which I live on the golf course. I've seen my condo raise quite a bit over the years, and all that does is create more money in the form of taxes for the city of Bel Air. We have always worked with the city of Bel Air. This is a win-win situation for all of us. And if they get in a situation where they say, well, we need $300,000, what they need to understand is we're cooperating and we're working together. And I've been a citizen of Bel Air for over 22 years and a member here for 36. We've always worked together. This is a win-win for everybody. We don't need to pay them $300,000 for that property for everybody to win, in my opinion.
Just a quick question. Is it appraised value or assessed value? Because those are two big different things.
Pinellas County Property Appraiser assessed value.
Assessed value.
Yes, ma'am.
I live off of the 6th, between the 5th and 6th holes in one of the condos. Are you going to remove the water with the fountain? There had been some discussion.
That's not on the golf course proper. You're talking, which hole?
It's between 6 and 5. The pond with
The main irrigation pond, yes, yes,
it's going away.
yes.
It's an awful beautiful thing to see that fountain and aerial views and stuff. There's no other place you're gonna put it?
You could. Yes, sir.
I was a member when the last round of renovations took place in the early 2000s, although I wasn't really present a lot and I wasn't paying that close attention. In the years since, I've heard some stories about how, after the architectural design was approved and during the construction phase, that various changes were made by the Greens Committee or the Renovation Committee, whatever it was. And if we're voting on your architectural drawings, that's the golf course we expect to see when the construction is done. I want to have some assurance that the Greens Committee or the Renovation Committee or whatever will not impose their own design changes on it during the construction process.
Where's Jack at? Yeah. Well, first off, I mean, in terms of, I can tell you that they are a very detailed group. So, in terms of watching what Dana and I do, I can rest, you can rest assured, they're involved, very, very, very involved. In terms of what we think, should happen and how the club should spend their money wisely, they know too that, we're not afraid to speak our mind. But, I'll be very, very honest. I mean, there were number 2, for example, number 17, for example, those are the types of changes that have been made. But, in the end, people here, they do have an open mind and been very receptive, so it's, this was a big collaborative effort. And, I can tell you that I'm extremely satisfied with what we're showing you here. So I don't have any, now, but you're asking if they're going to make things of changing our plan?
We're voting on your plan.
Oh, are they gonna do their own thing?
Your plan we want to see when it's done.
Well, I don't believe they would, but I can tell you if you see me jumping up and down out there having a fit, now you would know why. Yeah, I don't, I don't have any sense of that at all. We've developed I don't think there's any sort of, well, we'll let Jason do his thing and then we're gonna take over and do something different. That's not how this committee has worked. Hal says he doesn't like change. Nobody likes change. I don't know how else we can, make you feel at ease with that, but believe me, if there was something that, I felt uncomfortable with, you would know.
I think what Scott's trying to ask is who's going to oversee the construction company to make sure the plans are done as to what we voted on?
So that's one thing that we promised, that was part of our interview process long time ago, was that, and that's one of the differences, frankly, that Dana and I do compared to some of our colleagues, is that you have 2 principals involved every step of the way. So when it comes time for construction, we are on site every week. So, this is such, I can't overemphasize, this is such a high-profile project. This is the type of thing that not only, is it a wonderful thing for all of you, but, if this thing went awry, this is a career maker and a career ender here. So believe me, this is going to get every bit of attention we can give it. Did I see a hand back there? No? General, how we doing? Time-wise, okay. No other questions? We'll turn it over to Ed. There was one other one?
I just wanted to know what the elevation change is on set.
The elevation change, if I remember, now there were tees that were set at 25 and the green was set at about 7 or 8. Well, you're elevated enough that you have a wonderful view over the water, so, but it's not, it's very reasonable. It's not too much, it becomes a little bit Mickey Mouse, so it's not that way at all.
Number 6 green right now is at 25 feet.
Andy said number 6 is at 25 feet, so that's, the tees obviously, because we want to make sure that if you're on one tee, you can see over the next tee and over the next tee. So the back couple of tees, I believe we're at like 25, 24, 23, stepping down. And if anybody wants to come grab me afterward, I'll be happy to pull up any of the holes and speak with you for sure.
Okay, first I apologize for those of you who have sat through this before, but it's basically the same proposal as last time. Big question, can we afford the renovation? And I believe we can afford this renovation and more. The asset, any major asset like this, is paid for over the life of the asset. In this case, we feel it's going to be another 15 to 20 years before we're going to have to renovate the golf course again. Last time we renovated the golf courses was 2003 and 2005. Any major project like this is brought to the membership for approval. Major is defined specifically in the bylaws. If it costs more than 10% of the previous year's gross revenue, it's major. Next slide. In order for it to be approved, we have to have, well, first a quorum is defined as 25% of all the golf memberships. In this case, we've got about 770 golfing members, so 193 of them would have to vote, and at least half of them would have to vote in favor of this project in order for it to be approved. We tend to get very, very good participation in voting on these issues. Members feel are passionate about it. The capital expenditures limitation is defined there. Again, it's 10% of the previous year's gross revenues. Next slide. This is just the historical performance of the club. Historical performance doesn't necessarily mean it's going to continue into the future, but it certainly is a good indicator. Some historical recent projects, well, I mentioned the clubhouse renovation was back in the year 2000 at $6.4 million. That's been paid for. The West Golf Course in 2003 for $2.8 million. Prices have gone up a lot since then, obviously. $4.4 million in 2005 for the East Golf Course, been paid for. And then $3.1 million for the Sports Center. Some of the newer debt that we've incurred over the last 5 years is the purchase of the land for the parking lot, and then the paving, the drainage, the lighting, and the landscape for that totaled about $1.9 million. Needless to say, we definitely needed that north parking lot. If you look at it, it is almost full every single day. We also brought to the membership in 2015, 2016 a proposal for a new golf course maintenance facility. It was a 27,000 square foot facility to house all of the equipment that we use to maintain the golf courses. Again, that was approved by the membership. And then we also renovated all of the tennis courts, rebuilt the marina, and put in a new seawall for another $1.5 million. And that actually encompasses all of our current debt right now. So all the debt that we have, if we didn't do those projects, we'd basically be debt-free. Never happens. Also, thinking to the future, I'm not sure if you want to actually leave a debt-free club for future generations. Like I said, the most fair thing for everybody is for the assets to be paid for over the useful life. That's a fair thing for everybody. Next slide. We currently reduce our debt by $769,000, and that's principal only. Doesn't count interest, but we reduce our principal by at least $769,000. Next slide. This is our historical debt. This actually goes all the way back to 1986. I apologize if it's a little difficult to read, but if you look at where the blue line peaks out, back in 2007, going into the recession, we had almost $12 million in debt. We were able to bring that down, despite the recession, to our current level of about 5.5, and then we showed spiking back up with the renovation of the West Golf Course. But that is an indication that this club can handle and can pay down debt in advance of what it's actually projected to do. Next slide. The estimated cost of the renovation is $6 million. We plan to get a loan for that, a 15-year amortization loan. We are confident that we will get an interest rate of 5% or less. We actually have proposals for less than 5%, but I used 5% for this illustration. which makes the monthly payment about $47,000, or an annual payment of $569,000. The net surplus over the last 3 years for 2016 has been $787,000, 2017, $947,000, and in 2018, we probably had the best year we've ever had at $1.4 million net surplus. Using that surplus, or a portion of that surplus, we can pay for this renovation and still be in the black. Interesting, we've been preparing for this renovation over the last 3 years, so we've been saving up. We're trying to do better and better and better to save for this renovation, to reduce the amount of debt that we have so that we're prepared for the renovation. In 2018, I want to let you know that if you were to look at the financials, we actually made about $2,200,000, and that was because of an insurance claim that we put in from Hurricane Irma. Most of the damage that we had was actually on the golf course. It took out some older trees, which might have had to been removed with this renovation anyway. Next slide. Questions?
Ed,
Yes.
you're saying $6 million. It's $4 million to redo the grasses only, right? And $2 million for the renovation project. Is that correct? Is that how it breaks out?
I think I'm going to let the architect answer that question.
Okay, thank you.
So the irrigation component to it would be roughly $2 million. So that's plus or minus. So the rest of it, we're looking at about $4 million. So that's at $6 million total. If that's what you're wondering.
So to just replace the grasses, that what we have to do because of their 15-year lifetime span is $4 million, and the renovation would make it 2, or how does this break out? Break it out for me.
Well, it's a little bit difficult to do that because you're talking about greens and grasses, and so it wasn't just the grass. So in the end, we put that piece together, and that was roughly $3 million.
Thank you.
Hey Eddie, can I ask one quick question? Just to,
Do we still plan to renovate the kitchen this year and have other expenses in the clubhouse?
We have actually a 7-year capital plan, and all of those expenses are built into that plan.
just to kind of refresh everybody's memory and look full disclosure, what is the current thinking of the committee if we do this, and I think this is a wonderful plan, if we do this, what's the timeline you're considering for the East Course and the practice facilities? And what economics are you expecting from that project?
That's another 4 to 5 years out. It's actually scheduled for either 4 or 5 years out. The East Course greens were built differently. They were built to USGA specs, and I'll let Andy speak to that, but I think they'll last a lot longer. Andy?
No, the greens are actually built the same as the west greens, but they've always had better water on them.
He says that there we go.
Yeah, the east greens were actually built the same as the west greens. The difference is the east greens have always had a little bit better water quality on them than the west, so they've done a lot better over the years. That's why if you notice the east greens are always a little bit quicker than the west greens. Typically, they've been a lot healthier over the years. So.
One of the things as I've been in social environments, the thing that keeps coming up is members saying to me with full and heartfelt belief that this deal is done, it doesn't matter how anybody votes, that the counting will be done in such a way that it will pass. And that to me is not the way that this club operates, but there is a big wind and noise about that. Can you go over the election process and what safeguards will be put in place so that these concerned members will feel that there's integrity in the vote?
Okay, I think the best way to do that is at this special meeting is to have all the proxies there. It doesn't protect the anonymity of those voting because the proxies have the person's name and account number on it. So if there was a group of members, for example, that was appointed by the president to overview the voting, they would see who voted for and who voted against. We can also hire a third-party accounting firm to count the votes.
there needs to be some, I believe there needs to be some way, even if it's having one of the naysayers be on the election, judge of the election committee, so that they do not feel that there is a rigging of the election, and I think that will help the club to have that kind of transparency. And it's been very disturbing to me to hear, but it's a very widely held opinion. So
I'll discuss that with the board and see what action they want to take as a result of that comment. The historical voting has been overwhelmingly in favor of most of these projects. The only one that was a close vote was the swimming pool. Captain Folden.
Yeah, Ed, I want to thank the committee. They put a lot of time and effort into this, and I want to thank them for all that. But let me just throw out a few facts and figures that I'm sure you all find interesting, and I'll draw on these figures in my conclusion. The 2019-2020 Golf Digest top 200 golf courses, both public and private. There was one par 69 in that group. The par 70s, there was only 18% in that group. And the par 71s, there's only 23%. Par 72s took the vast majority at over 56% of those top 200 golf courses. And par 73s, 2%. And you think, well, par 73, two you might be interested in is Kapalua. Plantation is one of them. And right here in our own backyard, Stream Song Black is a par 73. Now, the most designs among the top 100 in the list, 9 of them were designed by Donald Ross. That's very impressive for going that far back. And out of the top 10 longest golf holes in the United States, 7 are par 6s, an average 770 yards. I'll draw on this in a minute. Now back to Bel Air Country Club. I went back to the survey of members to try and find out how we got to the point of considering total redesigns of both courses. I found out that under the golf satisfaction section, only 5% were dissatisfied. And hopefully those 5% belong at the new club perhaps now. I can only assume that 5% are now the members over at the Pelican. A question was also asked in the survey under potential improvements. Quote, upgrade the practice facility range such as level the practice tees and provide target greens, etc., unquote. Well, we have leveled the practice tees. That was in reference to the mats, and you guys did a great job on the mats. You've already accomplished that. And now to improve the target greens, they're an easy fix. Andy can easily do that if they want better greens out there. But someone sure read a lot into the etc. portion of the potential improvements. Somehow we have a proposal to double the size of the practice facility, causing the redesign of 2 marvelous golf courses and incur over $4 million in debt because of the reconstruction. Let me draw your attention to 2 of the older country clubs in the area, much like ours, Palmacia and Temple Terrace. Neither of those 2 courses have anything that even resembles a practice range. Last week at a tournament I was in over in Hillsborough County, I spoke to a country club professional from Hillsborough County, much like in Jim's position here, who's played Bel Air many times. I mentioned to him that the proposed renovations, and he said, quote, why would you even risk 2 great golf courses that are your income producers for what is already a most adequate practice facility? And in closing, I'm sure you're all glad to hear this coming, I find that the renovations of the west and east courses are totally unnecessarily and fiscally irresponsible. I would like to see the number 4 green enlarged, of course, and of course on number 6 on west, I would like to see that turned into a par 6 if we get the point down there at the west, and turn that into a par 72. Thank you. I urge everyone to vote no on this, by the way.
Well, I think the committee will probably address a few of your comments, sir. But I will say that, for one, it's actually is a par 72 right now. So it's not a par 70 or 71. So the master plan that you have in your hand is already par 72. So if you were to do what you're asking, it would be par 73. So that would be one thing. I mean, everybody's entitled to their opinion. Now, in terms of the west course, it's not touching the practice range. So there's nothing that's happening on the west course that has anything to do with the practice range at all. The practice range is completely tied to the east course. It was approached that way purposefully. So again, you have 1 and 2 on the east course, which wrap around that practice facility. There is nothing at all that's happening to the west course. Let me reiterate, nothing at all happening to the west course that is tied to the practice range. Okay.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming. I would like to tell you that when you receive your package with the proxy, we will have all of the drawings, all 18 of them, included in that package. So you'll be able to look at it and study it, have plenty of time to make a decision before you fill out your proxy. And believe me, this is certainly above board. And as we did for the Hall of Fame voting, we can have an accountant count the ballots and document them if that makes everyone happy, because we're about as honest as anybody could ever be in anything we do. So I just want you to believe that, and the fact that anybody thinks that decisions have already been made and that the course is going to be this or that or the other, that's totally wrong. We've been open with you, and from the first day that we started this process, we said, hey, it's the members club, it's your choice, it's your changes. Without your approval, we're certainly not going to do it. So thank you very much for your support. Thank you, committee, for coming. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Ed. And have a good evening.
So now it's up to you. The proxy votes will be in the mail, and I urge everybody to send in their proxy vote so that on April the 16th, we will have a go for the West Course.